Okay, this is part two of how you can save 40 to 50 grand off getting your helicopter ratings. And we're going to go more specifically into detail of exactly how you do that. And before we get going, in case you're wondering how many other people have done this, and I've had a bunch of people that have completed their training this way. In fact, I had a guy that was just flew down from Iowa a couple days ago, did a biennial flight review with me, and he was a high-time King Air pilot. He added on his gyroplane rating, got his commercial helicopter rating, and he's doing crop dusting with a helicopter. I think he's on his third season now of crop dusting. His name's Brad Iverson from Iowa. Jeff Baylor came down. He got his gyroplane ratings, went all the way to the CFI on the gyro, got the helicopter CFI. It's been a few years ago. He went to work Alaska flying a Huey, I think, and now he flies for, I think, University of Cincinnati, flying a BK-117 or EMS. Graham Ritter kind of did helicopter and gyroplane at the same time. He's the guy I mentioned in a previous video that he flew the gyroplane a bunch at night to get his 100 hours of required unaided night flight, so he could get a job flying EMS with Aerovac. My business partner Dean started with gyroplanes and helicopters, both kind of did the same thing, got all of his ratings done, and he flies for Aerovac as a line pilot as well. Mark Kennett, another gentleman from Iowa, got his gyroplane rating, added on his helicopter rating. My son Chris, who's an airlines captain now, he started with airplanes, added on gyro, added on helicopter. He flies an Airbus 320 for one of the airlines now. My niece Megan did exactly the same thing. She started with gyro. She has never flown an airplane, although she's going to get her airplane rating next. But did gyro and added on helicopter, and she is both a gyroplane instructor and a helicopter instructor. Brent Drake, who's the president of the PRA, he was a high-time gyroplane guy, added on helicopter, and so he got his commercial helicopter using this method as well. Got a gentleman from Spain who's just finished up. In fact, he just did his check ride a few days ago to get his commercial gyroplane rating, and we're finishing him up with his commercial helicopter rating. And I'm sure there's Cobus Berger, another gentleman named Cobus Berger, who was an airlines pilot, still is airline pilot. In fact, he flies the Airbus 320 as well. He added on his gyroplane rating, added on his helicopter rating. And again, I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of other people. Just off the top of my head, those are the ones I can think of. So there have been a lot of people that have done this, and it's quite possible. So as soon as you hear all these people, they're going, "Oh, that's impossible. You can't do it that way. That's bullshit." You can get it. You can do this. Okay. All right. So let's get started. If you're going to fly the helicopter and you're just going to get your helicopter ratings, that means your private, your commercial, instrument, CFI, and CFII, and you did it all in the R44. It's going to take you about 200 hours in the R44. There's going to be some books and DVDs that you're going to have to buy, and then also there'll be some check ride fees. And for 200 hours in the R44 at $450 an hour, that's going to be about $90,000. And by the time you buy your books and DVDs and pay 5 check ride fees, you're in for about $93,600 or so. Better part of $95,000. All right, well, right off the bat, if you weigh 200 pounds or less, now the weight limit on an R22 is 240 pounds. That's the seat limit. Practically, if you weigh more than about 200 pounds, it's not a very doable thing to do your flight training in an R22. If you're 200 or less, you can do it. If you're really more than 200, it's not a very workable plan. But let's say you're one of these guys that's 200 pounds or less. One of the easiest ways to save a fair amount of money is find a flight school that has an R22 as well as R44. And you can do a significant amount of your training in the R22. If you did it here, most of the guys end up doing about 130 hours in the R22 and about 70 hours in the R44, because you have to do all of your instrument training in the R44. Books and DVDs, again, are going to be about $600, and same amount of fees for the check ride fees, about $3,000, and that brings you to a total of about $71,500. All right, so you can save, there's 20 grand you can do right there. You can save just by if you're relatively lightweight, less than 200, and utilizing the R22 for much of your training. I can tell you, in reality, a lot of the people start with that in mind, and they ended up all I'm going to do as much in the R-22 as I possibly can, and they end up flying about half the time in the R-22, about 100 hours in the R-22 and about 100 in the R-44, just because they like the R-44 more. But anyway, if you really stuck to your guns and you flew the R-22 about 130 hours and the R-44 about 70, you could get by for about $71,500. So. Okay, well, let's see how much more of a savings you can get if you add on gyroplane, and you can currently do gyroplane ratings and then add on helicopter ratings. Well, in the case of getting if you were looking to get your commercial instrument, CFI, CFII helicopter, and your private commercial and CFI gyroplane, you can accomplish that in 70 hours of R-44 time. 55 of that would be dual, 15 solo, and 95 hours of gyroplane time, which 10 would be dual and 85 solo. Your fees for your books and your check ride fees would be the same, $600 for the books and about $3,000 for check ride fees. And so that would bring you up to a total of just a little more than $49,000 there, all right? And you've got helicopter commercial, instrument, CFI, CFII, gyro private, commercial, and CFI, and your PIC'd in the R-44. Right? Okay, for those of you that are lucky enough to be less than 200 pounds, you can actually, it really doesn't shave off that much money initially, but you can do fly the R-22. If you flew the R-22 for 20 hours, which would be all dual, 20 hours of dual, you could get by with 65 hours in the R-44. So it shaves off about 5 hours in the R-44, but you're adding back 20 hours in the R-22. The advantage is you're going to be PIC'd in both aircraft, both the R-22 and the R-44. But if you're less than 200 pounds, you could do 20 hours in the R-22, of which 20 is dual, 65 hours in the R-44, which would be 50 dual and 15 solo, and 95 hours in the gyroplane. Again, the books and the check ride fees would be essentially the same. And this would bring you up to a total of about $52,700 with essentially the same, all the same ratings, but you're PIC'd in both the R-22 and the R-44. Right? Okay, so for those of you that don't want to get their instrument rating, a lot of people don't realize it, but to get a commercial helicopter rating, it's not like an airplane where you have to have an instrument rating. To get a commercial helicopter rating, you do not have to have an instrument rating, all right? And let's say that you're one of these guys that I want a commercial helicopter rating in my hand as cheaply as I possibly can get it, okay? If that's the situation you're in, then this is how you do it. And if you're lucky enough that you can, again, fly the R-22, you can fly the R-22 for 55 hours, that being 20 dual and 35 PIC, and do 95 hours in the gyroplane, of which 20 would be dual and 75 PIC, and then your books and your check ride fees. Actually, check ride fees would be somewhat less because you got a couple less check rides and a few less books as well. So, and that would give you your helicopter commercial, your helicopter CFI, your gyroplane private, your gyroplane commercial, and your gyroplane CFI, and you would be PIC'd in the R-22 with a commercial helicopter rating in hand. And that would cost you about a little over $31,000, right? So that's if all you care about is getting a commercial rating, commercial helicopter rating in hand, okay? All right, for those of you that just want a commercial helicopter rating, but you weigh 200 pounds or more and you're going to have to do it in the R-44, then you can do the same thing just using the R-44, 55 hours in the R-44, which 20 would be dual and 35 PIC. In the gyroplane, you'd spend 95 hours, 20 dual and 75 PIC. And then again, about $600 on books and $1,500 in check ride fees. And that would give you your helicopter commercial. You're not even getting private. You skip private completely. You add on a helicopter commercial to a gyroplane commercial. So you ended up with a helicopter commercial and CFI, gyroplane private, commercial, and CFI. And it would cost you about $40,800 or so. All right. Okay. Now, all of these prices are assuming that you have absolutely zero flight experience. You have no other ratings at all. Well, guess what? If you have your airplane rating, you would significantly reduce some of these hours, and it would be even cheaper, okay? In fact, one of the things that you can do, especially if you're the one that's going to add on and get your instrument rating, one of the things you could do, and I highly recommend that you would consider doing this, is to get your airplane private and your airplane instrument rating, all right? Because when you do that, to add on a helicopter instrument rating onto an airplane instrument rating requires 15 hours of additional flight time in the R-44. So you're actually decreasing the flight time required to get the instrument from 40 in the helicopter down to 15 in the helicopter. So you're reducing the helicopter flight time by 25 hours at a rate of $450 an hour, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $11,000-$12,000 that you're saving. You're saving enough money by decreasing the amount of time you have to spend in the helicopter getting your instrument rating to pretty much pay for your fixed wing ratings. So it's almost like getting your fixed wing ratings for free. So I highly recommend that if you're in that situation, then that's what you would want to do. Okay, so what's the downside to all of this? I mean, we started out at about $95,000, and I can show you that for about, $32,000 or whatever, you can have a commercial helicopter rating in hand. All right, so what's the downside? The downside is you have fewer hours in the helicopter. All right, so in part 3 of this series, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to address how you can get quite a few helicopter hours for nearly no cost once you've achieved your ratings that you're in this position here. That'll be next, part 3.